We usually think of democracy as the end goal, right? The ultimate achievement for society. But what if it isn't? What if, as the philosopher Achille Mbembe suggests, we're actually heading for the exit? It's a pretty unsettling idea, and that's exactly what we're digging into today. This possibility that we're, well, leaving democracy behind. Okay, and this quote really gets right to the heart of it. Mbembe's argument is that there are forces right now inside our own societies that are fanning the flames of what he calls gruesome passions. The goal here isn't a better future, it's something much darker. What he calls societies of enmity, basically societies built on hate and hostility. And it's so important to get this. He's not predicting the future here. He's offering a diagnosis of what's happening right now. So how do we even begin to understand this so-called exit? Well, Mbembe says we've got to look at our present in a totally different way. It's not about looking forward, it's about looking backward. We have to be willing to uncover this secret and often really violent history that's kind of been swept under the rug. The story we don't like to tell ourselves about how our democracies were really built. All right, so here's the game plan for this explainer. We'll start with a key concept Mbembe uses to frame our time. Then, we're going to dive into that hidden history he talks about. After that, we'll connect that past to four huge trends shaping our world today, see how they create this world of enmity, and finally, we'll wrestle with the big question: where do we go from here? All right, first up, let's unpack this really powerful metaphor that Mbembe uses to get at our strange, modern relationship with violence. So Mbembe reaches back to Plato for this idea of the pharmakon. Think of it like this: it's a substance that's both a remedy and a poison at the same time. And he argues that for us, today, war, and especially the modern cycle of terror and counterterror, has become our pharmakon. We use it like it's the cure, the medicine for our problems, but in reality, it's also a poison that's seeping into our political systems, becoming a goal in itself, and pushing us further and further away from anything that looks like democracy. Okay, so if war is this poison remedy, where did we get hooked? Where did this habit come from? Well, Mbembe says the answer is buried in democracy's secret history, what he calls its nocturnal body. And this is such a key concept. It's like democracy has had two faces this whole time. On one side, you've got the solar body. This is the official story, the one we all know and love. It's all about civility, rights, and the rule of law back home. But Mbembe says this bright, sunny image has always had a dark twin, the nocturnal body. And that is the story of brutal, lawless violence. The violence of the slave plantation and the colony, which was, conveniently kept far away and out of sight. And here's the absolute kicker, the most crucial part of this idea. These two bodies, they weren't separate, not at all. As it says here, they were basically joined at the hip. The peace and civility of the democratic homeland, the art, the philosophy, the beautiful cities, so much of that was literally paid for by the brutality happening in the colony. The wealth was ripped from one place to build up the other. One body was feeding on the other. Yeah, out in the colonies, all the rules just went out the window. It was a space outside the law, a place where democratic nations felt they could unleash the most extreme violence they would never allow at home. And the people they were fighting against? They weren't seen as just opponents in a war. No, they were redefined as something else, an enemy by nature. And once you do that, well, you can justify just about anything, including their near total destruction. And if you want to see what that violence looked like in cold, hard numbers, just look at this chart. This is data from just 3 major decolonization wars. I mean, the difference in casualties is just staggering. It shows you just how incredibly unbalanced these conflicts were. This was not a war between equals. A lot of the time, it was closer to a one-sided slaughter. And that slaughter helped create the world we're all living in today. So, okay, that's the hidden history, the nocturnal body. But what does that have to do with us, right here, right now? Well, Mbembe argues that this history is crashing into 4 massive features of our time. And together, they're hitting the accelerator on this exit from democracy. Let's quickly run through them. First, you've got the repopulation of the Earth. These huge new waves of migration are totally scrambling our old ideas of who belongs where. Second, he calls it the plastic human. Think about it. Technology and genetics are literally redefining what it even means to be human. Third, there's computational life. More and more, our lives are lived through screens and algorithms, and we're kind of merging with our machines. And last, capital as war. The global market itself now acts like a battlefield, this ruthless free-for-all war for resources. So, You take that dark, hidden history we talked about, and you smash it together with these four huge modern forces. What do you get? You get a whole new political reality. A world that Mbembe calls a world of enmity. And the driving force, the core emotion of this new era, he says it's this deep-seated fantasy of separation. It's this incredibly powerful desire to build walls, to cut people off, to create a so-called pure community, a community without strangers. It's a fantasy where anyone who is different is automatically seen as a threat that has to be either controlled or, even worse, eliminated. And this fantasy of separation creates this really dangerous feedback loop that Mbembe calls a relation without desire. Just think about the cycle of terror and counter-terror we see all the time. Each side starts to look more and more like the other, and in the name of security, the rule of law gets tossed aside. We end up in this insane paradox where we're told that the only way to protect our rights is to give them up. And honestly, you can see the symptoms of this all over the place, right? It's in the walls and the militarized borders springing up everywhere. It's in the mass deportations of strangers and refugees. It's in this general state of suspicion that targets certain groups. You see it in the way the whole idea of equality gets chipped away, and citizenship gets split into the categories of pure and, borrowed. And you definitely see it in how things like drone strikes and assassinations have become just a normal part of how states use violence. So, yeah, I know this is a pretty grim diagnosis, it's heavy stuff, but look, the whole point of a diagnosis isn't just to make everyone depressed. It's to force us to stop, look around, and confront a really fundamental question about the path we're all on. And this quote, this one really brings the entire argument home. The core idea is that all that unregulated violence from the nocturnal body, all the brutality that was pushed overseas to the colonies for centuries, well, it was never going to stay there forever. You can't contain that kind of poison. And now Mbembe is saying it's coming home to roost. Its logic is starting to warp our own societies from the inside out. So if we accept this reality, if this is where we're at, the big question isn't just how do we fix our current democracies? It's much, much bigger than that. Is a completely different way of living together on this planet even possible anymore? Now, Mbembe doesn't pretend to have all the easy answers here, but he does point us toward a starting place. He says it would have to be a totally new kind of politics, one that completely and utterly rejects that fantasy of separation and stops defining itself by who it can kick out. Instead of that, he proposes what he calls a politics of the in common, and it's built on a pretty simple but also pretty radical idea. We only have one world to share, period. This isn't about us generously inviting others into our world. It's about waking up and recognizing that we are all, every single person, every species, already part of a single shared world that we have to figure out how to weave together. The question he leaves us with isn't if we should do this, but how. How on earth do we build a world based not on enmity, but on the simple fact that this is our shared home?